This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. Even after last night's tough loss, the Knicks are still just 2 wins away from winning an NBA championship. And fans today know the lore of 1973, the last time the Knicks won it all. In 1973, imagine this, star Jalen Brunson was still 23 years away from being born. A subway token costs 35 cents. Matthew Schnipper is our WNYC Gothamist culture editor. He wrote a new article about what New York looked like 53 years ago in 1973, the last time the Knicks were champs. And it turns out a lot was happening that continues to influence our city today. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Before we get into the specific 73 details, what is interesting to you about this Knicks final run? From a New York cultural perspective.
We need it.
Yeah.
New York needs this, I think, look, in your mind, what do you think would unify, Mariska Hargitay, John Turturro, Fat Joe, Michael Bloomberg, Timothy Chalamet? What other type of what is, nothing.
Event. Yeah.
Who are they? How are we going to come together? We need Karl Anthony Towns to sit here and say, he got asked about Trump, and he should be a politician. This guy, the way he talked about, the way he deferred and talked about, we are here so that people can have something to root for and to believe in. I was like, oh my God, just come into my dreams at night and, help me get ready for the day. I think, what I discovered in the story, which, we'll talk about, New York City was a much cheaper city in 1973. It's hard. It's a hard city. It's a hard city to live in a lot of ways. And I think this is a thing that reminds you why you pay that price.
It's kind of interesting. I was on the subway and the conductor was a little bit amped up. And someone got on this. The guy by the door, a real tall black guy, was like, "This city's ready." And these two little, sort of demure ladies, like, "Yeah." And it was all of us at the same time, like, "Yeah." What has it done to the mood of the city?
I mean, it's elevated it. Last night, I'm not sure, Not that many people got arrested last night. I was actually surprised. I think it was like 20 and maybe 8 are going to be charged, which is, for a loss, these are not Philadelphia numbers. So I would say, we're even losing with grace, I guess. But I think, it's elevated people. I have a very close friend who is a lifelong Knicks fan, and he said, I can't even imagine what my life would be like if they won, he's got several Knicks tattoos. He's just like, this changes us, if you're the underdog forever, that's how you imagine yourself as a Knicks fan. And then maybe just one day you aren't.
Listeners, as we look back at the Knicks and 1973, were you living in the city at that time? What do you remember most about New York? What it was like in 1973? What was going on in our life? Our number is 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-WNYC. What was New York like in 73 as compared to today? What was the culture like? What were important issues and events? Our phone number is 212-433-WNYC. Let's talk to Karen on line 2, calling in from New Jersey. Hey, Karen, thanks for calling All of It. You're on the air.
Thank you, Allison. I missed you last night at the party in the green space, but I have to say it was quite the vibe walking up through Soho and 7th Avenue back to New York Penn to take my train back to New Jersey to see the vibe in the bars all along the way while the Knicks game was happening. So it was terrific. But to talk to your point, I moved to New York City in the summer of 1972, 6 months before I passed the bar exam in New York State in 1973, and I was living in Xavier Hollander's apartment building. Xavier Hollander in the 1970s was a well-known madam, so I had many interesting rides in the elevator in that building.
I am sure you did.
Oh, God.
What made you interested, Matt, in revisiting 1973?
I would say I'm older than some of my colleagues, but I was not born in 1973.
I was.
Respect, to our Gen X friends. And I think just the absolute, it's a long time to not win, and I said, how can we illustrate that? How can we show the kind of the different timiness of it? And it was It's so different. We can talk. Some of the social issues were similar, but the way you moved around the city, what it represented, who was living, it was a very different place.
What was the average rent in 1973?
Oh, it was like in the 400s, I believe. Was that even that? It was very low.
I know you looked into the cost of a 2-bedroom luxury apartment in Manhattan.
I think it was like $400,000, I believe. The luxury, who knows what kind of amenities you were getting. But, I saw some of the ads. I just went back into the paper and it was just like, oh, God. And, for everything I was going through, you said the subway token was, 35 cents. I think with adjusting for inflation, it's still just about $2 in today's money, which is still less than our current $3 price. So the real estate is the thing that will make you want to barf, basically. Though. Yeah, that's just like, don't look at it,
We got a really interesting text. This says, in 1973 was a big year for community organizing, founding year for many NYC groups, Green Guerrillas, Transportation Alternatives, Park Slope Food Co-op, the 4th Street Food Co-op. It was a big year for beginnings. What else started in 1973?
CBGB opened. I was pretty excited about that, which CBGB also at that point it opened, and it was country bluegrass and blues and other music for, what is it, unappetizing gourmandizers, CBGB OMFUG. I was excited about that. It was around the beginning of Co-op City opened in the Bronx. Just sort of seeing, with CBGB, I'm a music person, and seeing, CBGB opened. It reminds you not just of what was happening in 1973, but how much happened since then. It was like, this guy opened up a bluegrass club, and then accidentally punk started there. All of that happened and shut. It wasn't just that it began. It was how much actually has stopped since then. It felt like we were really reaching back into the beginning of the city's kind of cultural history.
You hear how bad the 70s were for New York, sort of 75 and on. Was there something going on that made it possible to start new groups?
Definitely cheaper rent. I mean, look, this was the year of, 73 was the year of the garbage strike, was happening. This was the beginning. There was the year of the so-called hard hat riot, where construction workers were beating a bunch of anti-Vietnam War protesters. It was there was just higher tension, I think, in the city. And I think, you could move into the Lower East Side, you could move into Soho and get so much space. There were just empty buildings that had once been industrial spaces, and now were just, available. So if you had a weird idea, you could go get a place and make it. If you were a painter and you wanted a big spot, you can have it.
The Knicks are just 2 wins away from winning the NBA Finals. It would be their first championship since 1973. My guest is WNYC Gothamist culture editor Matthew Schnipper. He wrote an article about what New York was like 53 years ago. We're also hearing from you. If you're around, what do you remember most about New York in 73? What was the culture like? What were important issues or event? What was important to you? Give us a call or text us about your 1973 memories at 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. Mitchell is calling from the East Side. Thank you so much for taking the time to call all of it. You're on the air.
Yeah, my pleasure. I remember a lot about 73. That was the year I graduated high school. I had grown up in Far Rockaway, played PAL basketball through the 70s, and late 60s and early 70s. And, of course, the Knicks were our favorite team. You had Bill Bradley, you had Walt Clyde Frazier, you had Earl of Pearl Monroe, you had Dave DeBusschere, Willis Reed, and so on and so on.
Willis Reed was the MVP for that team.
And Bill Bradley was on Brian Lair this morning.
It's very Knicks time. Sorry to interrupt you.
Speak to Bill Bradley. I really like him. But what a gentleman and what a great senator he was for New Jersey. Sorry he didn't make the presidency. But as far as the way the city was, I had started coming into the city much earlier on. I was about 10 or 11 years old. We used to cut out a school and jump on the A train and come into the city and go to Chinatown and Little Italy and yada, yada, yada. But the city was kind of... it was sort of skeleton-like in certain neighborhoods where things were abandoned, and there was a lot of prostitution in the streets, and it wasn't what it is today. It wasn't as developed as it is today, yet it was just a wonderful melting pot. We used to go to the Fillmore East and listen to band practices on Tuesday night and conjure up our $2 to go on Friday and Saturday nights to see the shows. And going to the Garden was sort of like if you didn't have, the wherewithal to afford seats, you'd listen to the radio. And at that time, I remember listening to the championship game in 1973 on an AM Emerson radio in the school park with a bunch of my friends.
Oh, what an awesome memory. Thank you so much for calling. Let's talk to Janet on line 4. She's calling from Little Italy. Hey, Janet, you're on the air.
Good morning. Yes, we live in Little Italy, and we lived there in 1973 and still live there, although in a different building now. And we lived in a fifth-floor tub and kitchen walk-up, for which we paid $52 a month. And it was really still Little Italy on Mott Street in those days. You heard a lot of the old ladies. What I miss the most is the elderly ladies who used to bring their folding chairs out and just sit on the, open them up on the sidewalk and sit and gossip and comment on everybody going by, and including me. And when I found out what they were actually saying about me that I nodded and smiled to was in fact not complimentary, because we were considered the invaders at the time. We were the hippie invaders in their community. And now it is transformed, almost, obviously recognizable to me because I still live there, but it has now become the fashion hub of, sort of a kind of elitist group of wealthy 20-somethings. But we used to see John Gotti walking down the sidewalk with his 4 bodyguards on all circling him like bedposts. And they were looking up and around, and he was just chatting with whoever was with him or nodding at the folks he knew on the street. And I miss the old ladies and the things they used to say to me in Sicilian dialect.
I would have loved to know what they were saying. Thanks so much for calling. You know what's interesting, though, about what she said? The idea of the people bringing out their chairs and sitting in community. People are doing that.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Go for it. Yeah.
And there's a new version of this. I mean, it's the amount of people who are outside right now, not to quote Mom Donnie quoting Jadakiss, like we outside, and the amount of, even just on social media, I've seen people putting up videos and pictures of people projecting the game on walls, just like watching outside, in a Bonner Outpost in my neighborhood, people watching, after I think the game 1, I don't know if it was a game 1 or game 2 win, Spike Lee went up Lafayette Avenue in Fort Greene with his head out of the sunroof, like he's the Pope, just like waving to people. It's really joyous. And it happens to be nice weather, so that doesn't hurt. But it's nice to be outside, not for a protest.
Do you remember what it was like in 1973 in New York? Were you around? Give us a call at 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692. We'll have more after a quick break. You're listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. My guest is WNYC Gothamist culture editor Matthew Schnipper. He wrote an article about what New York looked like 53 years ago in 1973. That was the last time since the Knicks won the championship. They're 2 wins away from winning the NBA Finals. This text, Matt says, I was a CUNY college student and my rent was $65 a month. For the 3 of us, we paid $195 for a 3-bedroom apartment on West 163 and Riverside. This one says, I lived in a 1-bedroom with a rooftop terrace on West 84th Street between Central Park West and Columbus. $150. I lived there for 19 years. Then I started a family and we moved to the more affordable Park Slope. Bigger bang for our buck.
And I hope you cry yourself to bed with joy and wipe your tears with your money.
Let's talk about this.
Sorry.
That's
Super
all right.
convoluted.
It's all right.
Just jealous.
Let's
That's
talk
all.
about 1973. You found a New York Times story that featured an ad with Trump's first quote in the paper. Of course, he attended the game last night.
Yeah.
The story was called Major Landlord Accused of Anti-Black Bias in New York City.
Yes.
How'd you come upon it?
Yeah, this story was about a lawsuit that was filed against Trump and his father, who was, a huge landlord in the city who, over time was accused, over and over and over of bias, all kinds of different types of bias. This was specifically anti-black bias. Trump was in his 20s, and the story was about the suit being settled. They did not admit guilt in the suit, but I believe there was a payout. I'm going to, quote Trump here, who basically said, we would never be biased against anyone. We never have, we never will be, and I just imagined the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times since then he said something similar to the New York Times. So it's sort of funny that this happened to be 53 years ago was the first time he was giving the sentiment out. There also is a photo of him in this story with his car with the DJT license plate. So.
This says, in 1973, I graduated from the High School of Art and Design and remember my senior year walking on the Lower East Side with my friends at night, going to parties. We had our head on a swivel.
Oh, gosh.
Let's talk to Stuart, who's calling from Maplewood, New Jersey. Hi, Stuart. Thank you for calling all of it.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great.
Yeah, I was just graduated from NYU, and a good friend of mine was friends of Jerry Lucas, who was the center for the Knicks.
That's cool.
So he asked us if we wanted to go to the game, and we were sitting right behind the visiting players, and it was the most exciting time I've ever felt in my whole life, other than getting married.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, that's a swell memory. Thank you so much for calling in. Let's talk to Deborah in Chelsea. Hey, Deborah, thanks for calling all of it.
Hey, Allison. Thanks for taking my call. I was 13 years old, and I watched the games with my dad, and it was a way that we would talk to each other as watching the games on TV. We didn't go to the finals or anything. We did go to a couple of games, but we watched basketball and we watched tennis in the days of Billie Jean King and Chris Everett and McEnroe and all of that. And we lived in rental apartments. This was before co-ops. Everybody rented, and there were the people who didn't have roaches, and there was everybody else. And everybody had roaches. There was just the people who lied about it.
That's funny. Deborah, thanks for calling. And Mindy is calling from Bayside. Hi, Mindy. Thanks for calling all of it.
Hi. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well.
So I graduated high school in Bayside High in 1973, and I remember that they had just started the express bus because I used to take the train after my last semester of high school into the city, believe it or not, for literally 3 hours and schlepped back a 2-fare zone. So that was like a big deal. And I kept thinking, should I take the express? I think it was like $1.50 or something. And I used to go to the Knicks games with my dad. I went to a lot of the Knicks games, Walt, Frazier, and I love the Knicks. I'm still a big Knicks fan, watching all the games. Not happy with last night, but hoping tomorrow night will be great. And, it's a big difference from then and now. I mean, prices, obviously, and, just the neighborhoods. They're building. My neighborhood in Bay Terrace was a very nice little, suburb, and now, forget it. It's not a suburb anymore, and they're taking up all the land.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
You know what? We had this interesting, you're talking about how things change, Matt. This text says, we had a 4-room railroad flat in Yorkville. I rode my bike from East 92nd Street to the East Village for work every day. No one was riding bicycles then.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
You made the point in the article, or we've talked about this as this group, is that this was the year that hip-hop was invented.
Yes.
What's the origin story as you understand?
Oh, the origin story of hip-hop was DJ Kool Herc, who was a teenager. I want to say he was 17 years old, was set up in the Bronx at a party, and he was playing – DJs would play with two turntables, as they still do.
And a microphone.
And he learned how to extend what they would call breakbeats. So you'd listen to kind of soul records, and there would be a drum solo, and he would play it on one record – play it on the other. And you would have this sort of backing beat that would go on, and then he would be on the microphone sort of barking out encouragement, like keep dancing, which was sort of a proto-rap sound. And it kind of kept going from there. So he is credited as the sort of originator of hip-hop.
And a few years later, Rapper's Delight came out, and it was really the first commercially successful rap.
Absolutely, the first big rap song, yeah.
And in the course of it, the Knicks get a shout out. Let's listen.
I got bodyguards, I got 2 big guns, I definitely ain't the whack. I got a Lincoln Continental and a some new Cadillac. So after school, I take a dip in the pool, which is really on the wall. I got a color TV so I can see the Knicks play basketball. Hear me talking about checkbook, that it costs more money than a sucker could ever spend. But I wouldn't give a sucker or a punk from the rock and not a dime till I made it again. Everybody go, hotel, motel, what you gonna do today? Is I'm gonna get a fly girl, gonna get some spring and drive off.
I can listen to that endlessly. Let's talk to Serena in Orlando. Hey, Serena, thanks for calling all of it.
Hi, thank you for having me. I was graduating from City College, and we were the last class to graduate from Lewiston Stadium in 1973. After that, they tore down the stadium, and they built more buildings there. Our class speaker was Elie Wiesel, and both my parents were alive at the time. And I was tall and slender, and the world was ahead of me. And the Knicks used to wear shorts, so you could see their long, beautiful legs.
All righty then. I like that call.
All right.
After doing all this digging about 1973, what impression did you get were the best qualities of the city at that time?
I mean, is it hokey to say affordability? Yeah. I think, it was a different city in that I think there was, for a lot of people, it's much more self-selecting. It is not obviously a lot of people were born in the city, grew up there. A lot of people obviously moved to the city looking for cultural understanding, I think. But this was not a city. This was a city that was much more accessible to, close to all if you wanted to be a part of it. And I think that is no longer the case. It was not as – it was a city yet touched by Michael Bloomberg, I think, in a lot of ways, by Giuliani. It was cheaper. And I think that really, as, obviously Zohran Mamdani has talked about and everything he has said, the affordability kind of touches every issue. So that was the thing that struck me. Yeah.
Let's try to get Chuck in. One last caller. Chuck, you are our last caller today.
Thank you. I'm from Brooklyn. I went to high school. 2 things. For the Knicks, you'd see the seats for like $5, and then you'd wrap a dollar bill around the stub to give it to the usher to get to the expensive seats. And when we weren't seeing the Knicks, we were seeing the Schaefer Music Festival at Woolman Skating Rink. $150 and $250, and we're not talking hundreds. We're talking $1.50 and $250 for the Chamber Brothers, Judy Collins, Quicksilver Messenger Service, David Bromberg, later Patti Smith, the Ramones, Talking Heads, all for $2.50. That was the last good thing Cheeto Head ever did. He fixed up Woolman Rink, and we had all those great concerts.
Oh my gosh!
And thanks for that call, Matthew. What is something from 1973 that you wish you had experienced aside from the affordability?
Oh gosh. There are so many things. I mean, obviously the music is the thing that really stands out to me. There's so much that I miss that, I was about a decade from being born in the city uptown. And, I kind of think, if only I had been there.
Lunchboxes need to come back.
Lunchboxes need to come back.
Lunchboxes need to come back.
The film, I think, was amazing. Seeing that Mean Streets came out that year, and I think being able to participate in the kind of what was still a very kind of burgeoning film scene in New York would have been very cool, to be able to kind of go to some of, I mean, you want to know what I really wish to experience? Some of the parties, like getting to meet all the people that were there. I bet there were some really, really fun parties at some really cool lofts.
All right, fingers crossed for the Knicks. They're 2 wins away from winning the NBA Finals. Matthew Schnipper, he wrote an article about what New York looked like in 1973, the last time they did it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Allison.